AEW, All Elite Wrestling, is in Miami for 2 action-packed nights. October 15th for AEW Rampage and October 16th for AEW Dynamite at the James L. Knight Center. And with this big night, there's some big stars, big wrestlers in action, including Bryan Danielson. He's been all over the world, great matches. Most recently, an outstanding match with Kenny Omega, the champion of AEW. And Bryan, thank you so much. And right off the bat, just what is it like for you traveling around the country again and in Miami for these 2 big shows?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. I don't know if you know, but I've had some pretty cool experiences in Miami that are big kind of landmarks in my career, both of which are were negatives that were turned into a positive. So when WrestleMania was in Miami, that's when I was the World Heavyweight Champion and lost to Sheamus in 18 seconds. And and that sounds like something that would be pretty bad, but it really turned my career around as far as like the fans rejected the idea and got super behind me, that sort of thing. And a similar thing happened because I'm pretty sure Miami is where the original Nexus attack was too. And then I got fired for that and got brought back in the main event of SummerSlam. So, yeah, I've had a couple of interesting moments in Miami for sure.
Miami, it's interesting you said that, because then with the follow-up for that, because you mentioned the 18-second loss to Sheamus, but gosh, the next night on their show, Raw, the reaction was incredible. I actually was there for that. So the fans were just chanting your name and chanting the yes the whole night. And then you all even came out, I believe, for like a 6-man tag at the very end. And even your other competitors, your opponents and your teammates that night were even like, get in there, they want you.
Yeah. It was a pretty cool moment. You know what I mean? It's like, and it was interesting because I wasn't on Raw that night, so I was just on the dark match. You know what I mean? And there was a funny moment that happened where The Rock was out there doing a promo, and all of a sudden everybody starts chanting yes, and some Daniel Bryan. And I thought, oh no, for sure, because The Rock is so quick-witted, right? I was like, for sure, he's just going to turn around and it's going to become his thing, and I'm not even going to have a choice. And no, he's like, and then he came back, he said, like, hey, man, you're super over out there. I was like, oh, yeah, that was really nice. He could have easily turned it around into a Rock thing, and he didn't, and that was very kind of him. So.
Oh, and especially in Rock's hometown at the time as well, being Miami.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
But I'm excited to come back to Miami for AEW. I mean, so far, the crowds that we've had in AEW since I've been there have been like, you talked about that Miami crowd the night after WrestleMania being super loud for me, and I almost feel like every show I've been at with AEW so far has been like that when I've come out. Like, just this last week in Philadelphia when I came out, it was just like, it was unbelievable. You know what I mean? When I came out for the match with Kenny that was at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, the crowd was crazy. It's like same thing when I first came out as a surprise in Chicago, and so I'm hoping Miami is going to be just as crazy as they were that night. So
it's amazing with AEW and its fan base, because they are so passionate. But I do want to get to this real quick, and then we'll get off of that and we'll go into the fans, because I'm just curious then, Bryan Danielson, if maybe we'll see an 18-second match in Miami, but you'll be the winner this time.
Maybe, I hope so. Yeah. It'd be nice. I don't think I've ever won a match in 18 seconds. I've been wrestling for 22 years now. I just had my last on Monday was the 22nd anniversary of my first match, and yeah, not a single one of those matches, of thousands of matches I've had in my career, not a single one of them have ended with me with a victory in under 18 seconds. So maybe we'll shoot for that in Miami.
Yes, it's apropos. It's So, hey, how did you celebrate your anniversary?
Oh, I didn't realize actually it was the anniversary until I was at the bank, And I had to write the date, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's October 4th. That's been 22 years. So yeah, sometimes, when you have two kids and all that kind of stuff, sometimes, and you're traveling a decent amount for work, life becomes a blur, man, sometimes. So you don't know what day it is.
It's interesting with it being like a blur because now you're in AEW and just, is there any way to equate the fan base and the passion of it? It just seems like everywhere AEW goes, it's really good crowds. You mentioned 21,000 strong in New York for that Arthur Ashe Stadium Grand Slam event. Is there any way to equate just the type of crowds that are going to AEW?
Yeah, so what I would equate it most to is, so for example, if you go to like a concert, but it's kind of like like not necessarily like a super mainstream person, because casual people will go to a mainstream music concert. But so like if I were to go, like one of my favorite musicians is Frank Turner. So my wife and I went to one of his concerts in Phoenix, Arizona. And what I feel like with AEW is it's like going to one of those concerts where everybody's kind of a passionate fan. And even if you're not a passionate fan, so for example, my wife and I went with, my wife wasn't a passionate Frank Turner fan, and neither were her friends. So out of the four of us, one of us was a passionate Frank Turner fan. And then by the end of the night, everybody's like, that concert was awesome. Like the best concert we've ever been to. You know what I mean? Because you get swept up in how much everybody else is also enjoying it, And I feel like that's what's happening with AEW. It's that AEW and Tony Khan specifically and the wrestlers understand what the fan base wants very well, and they give it to them, And so when you come to an AEW show, like you have certain expectations. And usually the show exceeds those expectations, and people just have a great time. So I think that's why you see those reactions like that. I also think AEW's done a great job of creating new stars that people are super into. Like Hangman Adam Page just came back on Philadelphia, and you think like, oh, Bryan Danielson, main evented a couple WrestleMania. CM Punk, he's like a huge superstar. Certainly one of those guys is going to get the biggest reaction of the night. No, Hangman Adam Page got the best reaction. You know what I mean? So it's like they've created these new stars that people are super into and super behind. So I think that's what makes the crowd so rabid.
Well, you mentioned like Hangman, Adam Page, and we can go down the list. I mean, Ricky Starks, Sammy Guevara, there's so many, Darby Allin. There's so much talent in that locker where you have some of the ones you mentioned that we've known from big events, and now some of the ones that AEW is just cultivating and making these new stars. And curious for you, when you're seeing that, does that even get you even more amped up being there when you're seeing things like that happen with the younger talent?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons, one of the check boxes in favor of me going to AEW, because it was a very hard decision. My contract was up, and I had a great offer from WWE. I had a great offer from AEW, and so yeah, one of the things is all the incredible young talent that AEW is actually getting behind as a company, and then also the fan base is supporting those people too. You know what I mean? Like the biggest stars in the company, are people who may have never been exposed on national TV to any great extent before AEW. And you see it with the women too, with Britt Baker. So that's really exciting, and I love working. I love wrestling younger talent, not just because it's not just like, oh, I want to help the younger talent. That's not it either. I want them to push me, right? Because when I was 22 or 24, like some of these guys are, like I went hard. You know what I mean? And I wrestled Kamala one time, I think when I was like 25 or 26, and he had to have been 50. And like, and I mean, I didn't take it easy on him. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, like I want to go in there with some of the young guys who just want to go and just like, hey, we're going to push ourselves as hard as we can. And that's what I like.
Hey, did Kamala do the patented pat the belly?
He did, yeah. For sure, he patted the belly.
Little things like that. To me, as a fan, we get into it. But as you, a wrestler, is that something that later on you're like, oh, that's pretty cool?
That I got to wrestle Kamala and he patted his belly?
Well, yeah, that type of thing, sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's just funny. Like my experiences in wrestling have just been like one incredible / hilarious adventure after another. You know what I mean? So I it's not just individual moments. I kind of look back on the whole journey as being very grateful, for all of it, including the little detours like the Kamala thing, including like I'm dressed up, in a mask and singing the American national anthem in front of 150 children in England. You know what I mean? So all of it is like when you look back on it, is just it's just crazy, and I'm grateful that this is my life.
Wow, and it's just been an amazing journey for you and continuing. And Bryan, what has inspired that passion for you? Do you ever look back a little bit and just say, this person or these people or this event or these things, what really inspires that passion for wrestling for you?
Well, so I think this is going to be a kind of long-winded answer. So I think there's different reasons why people fall in love with it, and then there's different reasons why you stay in love with it, and then why you love it as you do it, right? The reason I fell in love with it, because I was a pretty sick child, so I just stayed home a lot from school. I learned to read fairly young, and one of my friends brought me over some wrestling magazines when I was sick, and my parents were wrestling fans, but I would just go through these magazines, and just like, a wrestling magazine as a kid, and it's not like today where it's like Netflix has you have so many hours of entertainment on Netflix. Like we didn't even have cable, right? So it's like you give a kid in first grade 5 wrestling magazines, right? And I mean, it was endlessly entertaining for me as far as like killing that time when you're sick, and you're not feeling well or whatever it is. And then my parents they took us to a show, like all that kind of stuff. And it was just the larger-than-life characters, really, as a kid. And then as you get older, you find more people that you kind of like and that sort of thing. So that keeps that passion going. And then once you start doing it, what I found is that it helps me, like pro wrestling, all the things that you need to do to become a pro wrestler also helps me just in life, like helps me become a better human being. And so it was like I was very shy as a kid, and I couldn't, like my senior year of high school, I couldn't even, I was asked to read a book report in front of the class, and I couldn't, I literally started and then got maybe 4 sentences in and had to sit back down. And so like going through these things that are uncomfortable, going out and pretending to fight in front of 200 people in your underwear, essentially, it's very nerve-wracking for an 18-year-old kid who can't even talk in front of his high school class, right? And so learning how to do those things, and then once you get kind of good at it, they talk about that 10,000 hours to mastery, and it's the working hard towards something, working hard to get better at something, and then once you get better at it and you feel comfortable doing it, like then you enter this sense. Now when I go out and wrestle, it's weird. I'm in like this flow state, right, where everything feels easy, and I can absorb the energy from the crowd. It's just a feeling that's unlike anything else, and it's borderline addicting, right? They talk about that with like expert surfers or people who like skateboard or whatever it is at higher levels. When you get to that higher level and you're very confident in what you do, you kind of enter this flow state, and it's unlike anything else. And so then it becomes almost an addiction. And then it's just like, and it's funny because a couple of the people were asking me about a couple of the wrestlers at AEW. They're like, oh, I just get so nervous going out there, and it's weird because I don't get nervous anymore. I feel butterflies, but the butterflies are more about excitement. Like I'm excited to go out there, and it's like a sense of gratitude, especially as I go out there. So me doing it is that it's just a feeling unlike anything else that puts me in that kind of flow state.
Well, two things I have to ask to follow up with that is, one, the magazines, were they the aftermags? And two, did you do your book report on Bruno Sammartino?
No, actually, I did a book report on Game of Thrones. So I read the first Game of Thrones book in 1999, and I think it had come out in '98, maybe, and it came out in paperback in '99. And they said we could read any book that we wanted and do a book report on it. And of course, I picked a 700-page book rather than like a 200-page book. And and I didn't even know what I was getting into because I wasn't into like fantasy books or anything like that. I went into the local bookstore that I would go to, and I asked. There was this guy because I read a lot, and one of the guys said, "Oh, there's this new book that you would really like," and I was like, "Fantasy book, Game of Thrones? Are you sure?" He's like, "Trust me, you will love this." And I read it, and I loved it, and I did a book report on it. Yeah. So, and as far as if they were after magazines, I don't remember. I'm sure at least one of them was. But so I would have been in first grade in like maybe 1986 or 1987. So there were a ton of wrestling magazines out then. So, and I wasn't smart enough. Like I wasn't. It's not like now where you can go on the internet and find out what kind of magazine or whatever. I didn't know what was what. I just like thought and was enchanted by it all.
Well, going with the aftermags, there's so many memories and moments there. And if there were those types of there are types of publications, but like you said, you can go online and the internet and things. But one of the great moments recently was you against Kenny Omega. And I'm curious, couple of things there. I'm curious, what are you feeling? What are you doing after the match? Are you thinking, hey, did we hit a home run? Did you know you hit a home run? Actually hit a Grand Slam at Grand Slam. And the other thing I was curious about with the match, I think two of the most important matches are the opening match and the main event. And this one obviously could have been main event for sure, but this one opened the match, opened the card. And what were your thoughts of going out there opening the show with this great matchup, and then your thoughts just afterwards?
So I loved making the claim, and I was being a little facetious when I would say it, but I loved it when I was in WWE and we would do like the European tours. I would make the audacious claim that I was the greatest first match wrestler in WWE history. And I said, the only person who can really compare is probably Ray. Ray's also a great first match wrestler, and the idea is that on these untelevised live events, like the best spot on the card is first, for sure, because it's like you're there, you can shower after, all that kind of stuff. You can watch the rest of the show. It's just like the crowd's always super easy for the first match because they're excited to see wrestling, right? And so I've always been somebody who loves being on first. Like that's so I love that aspect of it. But then too afterwards, honestly, I don't worry until a day or two later if a match was good or not. Like I honestly I don't worry about it. I'm no longer at that point in my career where I question whether something was good. This is how I approach wrestling. I get excited. I want to do the best I can when I go out there, but while I'm out there, I want to enjoy it. So my reaction to whether it was good or not is whether I enjoyed it or did I not enjoy it. And the match against Kenny Omega, I was buzzing, right? Like, you have to keep in mind, I hadn't wrestled since April. I'm 40 years old, right? It's like, oh no. It's like, I got dragon suplexed on a ramp. I got dragon suplexed off the top rope, right? I took some hits, and afterwards I was buzzing to the point where I couldn't really sit down. You know what I mean? Like I felt so good, right? And the energy and all that kind of stuff. And then so it was. I didn't worry about whether we knocked it out of the park or hit a grand slam. I worry about did I enjoy what I just did? And as far as my enjoyment, that's a 10 out of 10. When you look at okay, what are the matches that you enjoyed the most? and if you rank everything from a scale of 1 to 10, that was a 10 out of 10 enjoyment for me. You know what I mean? In the sense of there's only probably a handful of matches that are even comparable, so it was, to me, it was just a ton of fun. And then, and then what I do after is a day or two later, I'll go back and watch it, and then that's the point where I pick myself apart, and that's the point where I go back and learn. And so, because I find that if you come back and the first thing that you're worried about is, did we do a good job, then all of a sudden you're not enjoying it as much as you could. And as much I feel like wrestling is not a great job if you don't enjoy what you do, because it hurts way too much. So if you come to the back and your first thought is that you're worried, did we do a good job? Then I'm like, oh man, you probably should switch your perspective a little bit so you can enjoy yourself while you're out there. So.
Well, gosh, everyone enjoyed that one. It was incredible. And hey, we're going to wrap this up. And thank you so much for the time. We got these two big shows coming to Miami, October 15 and 16, back to back. Will you be able to have any free time in Miami? I don't know. Is the family coming with you? Or is there just somewhere you're going to go the beaches or just relax during this time down here?
So I don't know, because, typically our time is short. On TV days, you get to the building at 1 o'clock, right? So for me, mostly it's I wake up and I go work out. I get some coffee, which is my new addiction, and then I go to the building. So I don't have a ton of time to go experience much or anything, and so yeah. But I don't know. I like finding local gyms, local places to go eat, local coffee shops. So that's usually how I see a city.
Oh, that's great. And Liz, well, thank you so much. And hey, in closing, hey, everything okay with Russell Wilson? Are the Seahawks okay? What's going on?
So you have to understand, I am a huge Seahawks fan, but very rarely do I pay attention to what's going on.
Well, he just got hurt. He got hurt, his finger. But I hope it's okay.
Yeah. I hope he's okay. So I love Russell Wilson, not just because of the way he plays, but because of how he presents himself and the charity stuff that he does, especially around the city of Seattle. So I always hope that Russell Wilson is doing well. So I don't know if the Seahawks are good or if they're not good, but I hope Russell Wilson and I hope that the players and the people are doing well. So.
Well, listen, thank you so much for the time. All the best. We'll look forward, of course, to see you all down here in Miami for All Elite Wrestling. Thank you, Bryan Danielson.
Yep, thank you very much.